back to Hot Flashes and Cool Topics, everybody. Today we have on an awesome guest. She's an actress, a producer, and author of 10 different books, memory expert, radio host, and I could just go on and on and on. But let's just introduce her. Marilu Henner, thank you for coming on the show today.
Hi, so nice to meet you. And you're in one of my absolute favorite cities. Not only have I performed there, but I've done book signings there. It's such a great place. I went to a Trace Atkins concert there. It's such a great, great place. I love Nashville. It's very, very special. So.
Oh, well, thank you. We enjoy it as well. Colleen and I are both transplants. We're not native Nashvillians, but
where are you guys originally from?
I'm from Kentucky.
And I'm from New Jersey. So.
Oh my gosh, my nephew and niece who are 6 and 8, they kind of live with us half of the time. And I think that's been the hardest part of this pandemic is having little children on Zoom trying to do school, but they're back at school now, and that's great because their campus is big enough so they were able to do that. It's great. And my two boys both graduated from college, and they're both in the world, but one came home because of an apartment fell apart, and then the other one came home for a little while. So, you know, it was like nice to have them there, but I'm very happy that they're on their way and their careers and everything else.
Yeah, I mean that was the hard thing. I enjoyed those like the month or month and a half to have them back because that would have never happened. You know, they're both in their 20s.
The first 3.5 months of the pandemic, because I've been mostly traveling back and forth between Vancouver since July with all the movies and stuff. But I said, somebody said, well, what is it like in the pandemic? And I keep saying, you know, like when you're away with your family or Christmas break or summer vacation or something, you're like, oh, I wish we could have one more week. Well, it's been 3 months.
Yes.
An extra week for 3.5 months.
Yes. Yeah.
You're like, okay, time to go back to normal. Okay.
Yes.
I would never go back to normal because I think that this has been a reset for the planet, for so many different people's, you know, and schools of thought and just people's perspective. You know, I wrote a book a few years ago with my husband called Changing Normal. And it's like, we have to change our normal. And if we don't change our normal after this, then we have learned nothing through this entire year.
That's a very good point. Along those lines, you've been quarantining for the last 13 or 14 days in Vancouver because you have a movie.
On day 6, but yeah.
You're on day 6.
But so you have been, even in the pandemic, you have been so busy with movies. And can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing lately?
Sure. This is my 6th movie I'm about to do. I've done, this will be my 5th Hallmark movie. 4 of them are part of the Aurora Tea Garden series that I've been doing for 6.5 years with Candace Cameron Bure. So this is the 4th in the series. I've also done a Lifetime movie that's part of the Ruby series written by V.C. Andrews, and I play a total bitch. I've ever played. She's a headmistress and she's horrible in 1962, and it's crazy period makeup, and I almost don't even look like myself. It's kind of fun. And I also shot a Hanukkah movie for Hallmark, and that was like last October. It's like crazy. I have this whole nother career dubbing foreign films for Netflix. So
Really?
Oh, that is really cool.
Did you just start doing that, or has that been?
I started in September. I started doing it, and I've done 3 of them so far, 2 French ones and a German one. Well, I love anything that's challenging. I love anything that makes you feel like, oh, I've never done this before. How can I get really good at it? What can I do that might be a little, you know, I mean, because I'm used to dubbing my own stuff, but to do it sort of fitting into somebody's mouth, you know, my language into their mouth and making it believable is like a real challenge. It's really fun though. It's like I love anything that's a little different than from anything I've done before.
With the pandemic, I know you have to quarantine, but how are the sets different now?
Oh, well, first of all, everybody wears masks until we only take our masks off for the final run through. Everybody wears masks, and most people wear masks and a shield. And they give the crew a break like every 2 hours, and everybody goes outside or they do whatever they eat. They just take a break. Everybody's always social distanced. You can only have X amount of people in a set section at all times. When we sit in like a green room, we wear masks or shields. I prefer a shield because I wear glasses. And so because I wear glasses, I put the shield over the glass. And also I don't like constantly having to reapply my makeup. So we sit and we're socially distanced and everybody's spaced, and it's like very different, but everybody's respectful. You know, the people in Canada, they don't have that many cases. I mean, it was,
wow.
And so I've had 22 COVID tests so far, and they've all been negative and not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you've done work for Hallmark, and how is it with the seasonal shows? Because they become so popular. Everyone looks forward to the December or really November movie list.
Right, of course. Oh no, it's great. I've done 24 Hallmark movies. Well, two Hanukkah, 2 Christmas movies, and they're great. People love them. I can't believe it. And it defies across the ages and the genders, and everybody loves a Hallmark movie, and it's just so much fun to be part of that franchise, part of that machine.
When did you fall in love with acting? When did you know that's what you wanted to do?
So I come from a big family. My family owned a dancing school in the backyard with 200 students between the ages of 2 and 80, including the nuns who came over for stretch classes. My mother ran a beauty shop out of our kitchen. My uncle lived upstairs with 10 cats, 2 dogs, 2 birds, a skunk, 150 fish, and his boyfriend, Charles. He taught art at the Catholic Grammar School. He was the neighborhood astrologist, and he also ran a cat hospital on our roof. So I always felt like I was in show business, with the crazy upbringing that I had. And even as a little child, I wanted to do this. My older sister, who's 10 years older than I am, I would be like the little girl carrying her script because she'd be in school plays, and I always went with her and ran lines. And I just knew I wanted to be an actress. I knew as a child I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to be a writer, and because I loved to write always. And so because of it, it's just something that every day I would think, nothing is wasted. Everything's connected to everything. Every person I meet could turn into a character later on. Every bad experience I ever have can turn into something I use. I mean, even as an 8-year-old, I understood how acting operated, what it was like to be an actress. So I just always, did everything. And because of the dancing school, people would call our house, call our studio, my mother, and would say, oh, we need 2 kids for The King and I. And I'd be like, pick me. We need 10 kids for, we need 12 kids for The King and I. And I'd say, pick me. And we need 2 kids for South Pacific. So I got to do that. We need a young girl to play in the Wild Duck, in Henrik Ibsen's Wild Duck. So I was doing a lot of theater in Chicago. And when I was 15, I got involved with a theater, because off-Broadway is one thing when you're in New York, but in Chicago, the community theater network is huge, and it's very available to people who do other things, whether they're a student or they're in the advertising business or whatever. Anyway, so when I was 15, I did a show that was extremely well received in Chicago. It was a production of The Boyfriend, and it was for Hull House. And one of the guys in the company, this great guy, his name was Jim Jacobs. He was unbelievable. And he called me one day, we bonded. So he came to my Sweet 16 party. And 2 years later, not even, he called me and he said, Henner, I've written the show. It may never get off the ground. We're going to perform it in a converted trolley barn. I wrote it about the kids I went to high school with. I know you're a lot younger, but it's called Grease, and I want you to do it. So I went to the first rehearsal, and there were 2 stacks of papers about 11 inches tall. And he passed it out, and it was like, here's the book report scene, the polio shot scene, the lunchroom scene, the pajama party scene, all these different, the rumble scene, all these things. And here are these songs. And so over a course of amount of time, we fashioned Grease and performed it. They loved it. People went crazy for it. The show, people from New York saw it. They wanted some of us to come and audition. I couldn't at the time. I was starting the University of Chicago on 4 scholarships. So I thought, you know what? It's not going to be a hit. It's too Chicago. But they made it into a hit. And then I was kicking myself in the ass. But then he called me when I was a junior in high school and said, you're going to be kicking yourself again if you don't come to New York to audition today. So I did, and got the job and changed my career. And that was it.
Wow. I mean, that is, yeah. And, I've I was just listening to your book that you wrote, The Total Memory Makeover. So I was reading that one. So I was listening to your book, and was that written like in 2012? Is that right? Just listening to your book and everything, it sounds like you had such a fun family. Like I'm from a big family too. I'm from 12 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm like,
You in the family.
I'm number 11. So that was when you got into birth order too. That was really interesting. I thought that's a really hard one for me to even think about because I was one of the babies.
Yeah, who even counts, how can you even, there are probably no statistics on 11 out of 12 kids. So.
Right. But your house sounded like just a blast. Like when you talk to like the parties that you guys would have these big parties, your mom's dance studio, like you
Yeah.
just
No, it
mentioned.
was a very memorable upbringing, and people to this day, who were dance students, they talk about it, and they just, they talk about just the experience of being at the house. And I always say, that because my mother taught, not only did we teach, and the sisters mostly taught tap, ballet, jazz but my mother taught social dancing. She had jazz classes and stuff like that, but she taught social dancing not only to grown-ups, but also to teenagers. So I always say that somewhere near our dancing studio or near our house down the street, everybody had their first kiss somewhere.
I'm sure they did.
Property, somewhere.
Oh, but and there's so much to talk to you about, but I was so fascinated by, and I'm right, I wrote it down, Highly Superior Autobiographical Memory. I was completely fascinated by it, and you're one of 12 people in the world. Is that correct?
Well, the numbers changed a little bit, but the criteria has changed because they have a percentile. I think there's 6 of us in the 99 percentile, and
Okay.
so I don't know what the final number is, but they're having a hard time finding people. It's really amazing. It's not, they wired me, put me through an MRI. They took 300, they did 300 measurements of my brain and found 9 areas 10 times larger than the normal brain. They put me through this MRI and fired up questions to see how the neural pathways worked. And, the testing's ongoing. I did testing a couple of months ago, and it's just, they're always trying to figure out the brain, and so I've already signed papers saying that
Yes.
brain to science, and we're in medical books. It's funny because when the 60 Minutes thing came about, because Leslie Stahl's been a friend of mine for a long time, and when she was offered the story of a woman by the name of Jill Price, who had done the research, the initial research with them, because she went to somebody and she said, I can't forget anything. It's just in there. So they were fascinated by it, and they did all of these tests and stuff. And then they offered the story to 60 Minutes and to Primetime Live. And Leslie Stahl basically said, well, hate to burst your bubble, my friend Marilu Henner has the same memory, so, it's the same as hers. So then they couldn't find many people. Diane Sawyer did the story on Jill Price, the woman who had come forward. And then Leslie wanted to do the story and expand it. And so they had only had 6 of us at that time when they put
Wow. Yeah, that it was amazing. I saw something about Jill Price, and it was interesting how the bad memories really got to her.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Memory's tied to adrenaline. That's already been proven. So everybody's going to remember the bad and the good. I feel like we're so lucky we get to cushion all those bad and good memories with all those like little sweet neighborhood memories and nice things that happen on a school night. And you know what I mean? It's so, to me, I love having, let's put it this way. I can't imagine not having the memory that I have. And I would feel like so much of my life would have been different had I not had this memory, because one of the best parts of having the memory is that I can like go put on the brakes and say, whoa, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Or I can also like get together with people and it feels like no time has passed. I feel so lucky that I can say, hey, remember the last time we saw each other? It was like, blah, blah, blah. And I can just pick up where we left off. And it's like such a special feeling to have that.
When did you know, or when did you suspect that something was different, that you were able to remember things that other people couldn't?
Well, one of 6 kids, not one of 12, but you're always looking for something that differentiates you from your brothers and sisters. So, being especially the third, I was the third girl. My mother hadn't had a boy; she had a boy a year later. So I was the one with the benign neglect. You know what I'm saying? So I knew I had an unusual memory, even at 5 years old, and so did they. And I became sort of the family historian. And people would say, tell it to Marilu, she'll never forget it. And people would say like, whoa, what's with this kid and her memory? So my nicknames were like Miss Memory, Memory Girl, Univac, the old computer and stuff. So yeah, it was always, it's so funny because at 6 years old, I could put myself to sleep at night going, what did I do a week ago? What did I do exactly this day in kindergarten? What did I do when I was Crystal's age? And I would do that. And now I'm doing it with my sons. And that is so much fun to do when I'm having trouble sleeping at night. And I'll think like, what was I doing exactly to the day that I was Nick's age, and I'll like do it. And then I'll live that whole day in my head as a meditation, or Joey's day or something. It's really
It's I was just listening and doing some of the exercises in your book, and I did the one about your senses.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised that I'm more of the listening, the sound.
Well,
and I thought
podcast, come on.
I know. I mean, I was like, really? I mean, I'm a horrible singer, but I was like, but the music.
Yeah, music and also probably, when you take directions, like you have to hear them rather than just see them. Like it's almost like it's recorded back. But anybody in radio who says, "Oh, I'm surprised," I'm like,
I know I thought it would be taste for sure. I thought, it'll be taste. And it was really an interesting exercise. I want my husband to do it. And after this, I'm going to be like, okay, he's got to do it too.
Do it right.
Yes.
Yeah, because the book does have a bunch of exercises and you talk about memory and strengthening your memory. And you gave some tips about like exploring your primary track. And what do you mean by the primary track?
Oh, well, I always say that in the jigsaw. Okay, so first of all, everybody always says to me, "Oh, you've got such a good memory. I'm such a bad one. And I go, no, there's something you remember especially well. You're just not really paying attention to what it is." And so as I always describe, and I describe it in the book this way, it's like in the jigsaw puzzle of your life, what are the hard-edged pieces by which you can interconnect your other memories to? For some people, it could be anything from places they've lived, places they've worked, their children's lives. Sports is a huge one. Vacations is a huge one. I've heard everything from hairdos to clothes to food. I've heard bats, which I said in the book. Everybody's got some primary track on which they've embedded their memories. And everyone has a dominant sense. Everyone is a sight, sound, touch, taste, or smell person. And if you can cross-connect your primary track with your dominant sense, you can figure out how you receive, how you retain, and how you retrieve your memories. Because the truth of the matter is the people with HSAM, we just happen to have an extraordinary retrieval system, because everything you've been through is on your emotional hard drive. It makes you behave in certain ways. You go through your life and you might meet somebody and say like, why do I love that person? I just have such a natural feeling. Or, oh my gosh, why don't I like that person? Or what feels familiar about this? It's your life's recorded and it shows up at different times without you even accessing it. But if you learn how to access it, you can then use so much of it. This is how I always describe it. And I said this in the book as well. It's like if all we do is we wake up, we live our lives, we turn off the light, we go to sleep. We wake up, we live our lives, we turn off the light, we go to sleep. And nothing has moved forward. What does it all mean? So to me, developing a better autobiographical memory, it's really our strongest line of defense against meaninglessness that we have. Because you can then take the memories and the experiences from the past, you bring it to the present, and you let it inform a better future. You pay more attention to red flags. You pay more attention to what makes you feel good. You pay more attention to foods and how they make you feel bad or good. You pay more attention to those winning moments in your life and how would you go about almost duplicating them. So there's so much about memory that people don't use, and especially autobiographical memory, because we sit in school and we don't use autobiographical memory. We use, semantic memory, we use rote, we use so many other types of memory. So it's just so much better to like use your life. Why not?
Right, right. And I was a former elementary school teacher. And when I was listening to your book and the things about smell and the things about taste and the like the classical music,
Right.
when right toward the end of my career, they were starting to bring that in. So when they would have statewide testing, all those testing, they pass out peppermints to the kids. They said put some classical music on. And I thought, did they listen to her book? Did they listen yeah.
It's cross-connecting.
Yes.
And let's face it, we've all gotten super lazy. We've gotten lazy with our smartphones. So we just rely, people don't even know their phone numbers anymore. It's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you said using your brain. I think that I was writing that down. It was something about, and here I don't remember what you said, but I'm sure you will.
When they were little, I would say, okay, use your brain. And they'd say, okay, Mom, I know this is a use your brain situation.
But it is so good. It's so good for aging, an aging brain, to keep it working,
Were either of your sons, did either of them have the trait towards the memory, autobiographical memory, or were they just mad they didn't get it like Mom has?
No, actually, both of them have extraordinary memories, but my younger one, Joey, he's got an unbelievable memory. In fact, when he played football, he was the wide receiver in high school, but they gave him all the plays. He'd call the plays because he had them all in his head. He's also a life master in bridge. He became a life master at 24. He started playing when he was 12, and he just plays bridge all the time. And he wants to be a comedy writer, so he's writing comedy scripts and doing other things. But he makes great money teaching bridge and playing bridge.
Sure.
Working with people, because he's just got one of those, memories.
That's going to help him so much, though, in anything that he does. So Absolutely. At least he's happy he got it from Mom.
Yeah, I think that has a great memory too, but Joey definitely has. He's a little other. Yeah.
Right. Can we backtrack a little bit? When you were auditioning, I love the story of when you were auditioning for Taxi. And they were looking for a woman who was a little bit older than you were and had a child, but they kept calling you back. What was I know that was a difficult time because your mom was sick. But can you talk about that story a little bit, about how they kept calling you back?
Well, I had been working as an actress in New York. I'd done a few Broadway shows, and CBS offered me a contract. And then I got so they gave me money to stay away from the other networks while they looked for something for me. So I then moved to Los Angeles because I got cast in a film opposite Richard Gere, whom I knew from the Grease family because he had done Danny Zuko in London. And so I came to Los Angeles, and there was a casting director who really liked me by the name of Joel Thurm. In fact, I have to call him. So Joel Thurm. In the meantime, they had me do, I didn't honor my contract, but this is like a crazy long story. All right. So I was in, I was in Rio de Janeiro with John Travolta. He and I were dating. We were in Rio. I get the call just after I land. They said, CBS has a pilot they want you to do. And I went like, for my contract, I said, can I do it as a guest star since I can't even read it? And they said, okay, fine. You can do it as a guest star. And I thought for sure they would turn me down because I didn't want to leave. I spent 2 days in Rio. I went back. I shot it. It was called The Paper Chase. And I played Susan, so I was in The Paper Chase, the pilot. So now, in the meantime, Joel Thurm kept calling me in for Taxi, and they wanted somebody who was a 33 to 35-year-old Italian New Yorker who had like a young teenage daughter. Goodbye Girl had just been out, so it was an unmarried woman. So they wanted that relationship, that mother-daughter relationship. And I was 25, and they called me in, and it was like, there's no, I couldn't biologically have a daughter that old. But anyway, he liked me and he kept calling me in. And in the meantime, I honored my CBS contract by doing another pilot for CBS called Leonard with Leonard Fry, where I played the sassy secretary. Okay, so now they put Paper Chase on the air. It tests, it's going to get picked up, and I test high. And they were like, okay. And they said, but we don't have her. She already honored her CBS contract. And in the meantime, my agent said, and she's auditioning for Taxi. So the Taxi guys were like, oh, she's so young. She's not the right person. But Joel kept saying, trust me, she can work with the guys. she can hold her own with the guys. You believe her as a cab driver. You believe her as somebody who would be in the art world. You believe her as a mother. She's the right girl. Let's make the daughter younger, blah, blah, blah. So all this time I'm going back and forth to Chicago because my mother is taken very ill with rheumatoid arthritis. And so I was like, I literally would fly into LA. They'd pick me up at the airport and I'd go back to the airport and I'd go back to Chicago. Anyway, my mother passed away and on May the 13th, and they called me back into taxi 2 more times. And they were like, we don't know what to do. And so finally my agent said, you're going to lose her because Paper Chase really wants her. She tested super high. So you have to say goodbye to her. And they were like, okay, we'll give her 2 little kids that I still couldn't have had, but it doesn't matter because I was 25 and then my son was 11 and my daughter was 9, but it was okay. So that's how I got Taxi. And I just thanked Joel again the other day on the phone. I said, thank you, because you really were my champion and made sure that they considered me, and they liked me a lot. They just felt like, oh, is she too young to play this part? So, and it was fine. It was good. I always say that you don't become a success in any career unless somebody champions you or they fall in love with you or, whatever. So I'm always telling my boys that find that person who's going to be like your little guardian angel and sort of help you. And even if you would have gotten there yourself, it doesn't matter. Having somebody in your corner is so important.
It is. And that TV show was such a springboard. I mean, for that whole cast.
Oh.
I was thinking about that and I think that was like almost the breakout role for, one of the breakout roles for everybody in that ensemble.
Danny Devito. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's amazing. Danny Devito has the best audition story because he was like down to his last unemployment check. I think his last clean shirt, he had 10 in his pocket. He got the call in. And he grabbed his script here, and he got in there, and he said he was nervous, and the papers were shaking, and there was a whole room full of people. All the guys who had done Mary Tyler Moore and Jim Brooks, who was still doing The Simpsons and writing movies and Academy Awards and stuff. Anyway, so he walked in, and he was like, "All right, before we begin, I have one question." He had a script in his hand. He went, "Who wrote this shit?"
It was Louis.
That's our Louis. And when he came out of that cage in the first episode, because they had him, in the cage and stuff like that. When he comes out to like confront Judd's character and was like, Riga, 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 Riga. And he walks down the stairs and you saw the height difference. Forget it, a star was born.
Craziness of that set. Since you kind of grew up in a crazy environment that was always go, 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 do you think it felt more natural for you because you had Andy Kaufman on that set?
I think, I think having grown up the way I did sort of prepared me for life in general because, bad behavior fascinates me. You learn like order, you create order in your own way out of the chaos around you. I used to be able to do homework with the television blasting and dancing students walking in. It's like, nothing was normal in my house. Right. And so because of all the craziness of a set and show business never seems to throw me. So, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to my parents for so many things. Creating this environment that my parents both lost their mothers when they were 7 and 8 years old. My father was put in an orphanage. They grew up in poverty. They were first generation Polish and Greek, and that they came together and created this little neighborhood oasis in a lower middle class neighborhood that became the cultural center for miles around and had this like spirit about them. And, everybody wished that they had my parents. I was very, very lucky to have the parents that I did. And people talk about them to this day, and even though we lost them early, they had such impact. And so, I love them so much. And I feel so grateful for everything that they gave me, including my brothers and sisters whom I talk to every day, but also a love of movement and a love of theater and culture and so many things that they instilled in us. So.
Yeah, it's so, when you talk about order, because I can identify with chaos. Colleen, you have Colleen's about.
I have 4. There's 4 girls. So.
But we're 10 girls, 2 boys.
Ooh,
so, yeah.
know what? Your mom probably would have stopped if she had 10 boys.
She always said, I am so glad it was 10 girls instead of 10 boys. And a lot of people say boys are easier. I have one of each.
Boys are easier. I have 2 sons, and I feel like they're so easy compared to what a lot of my girlfriends going through. Although my mother always did say that you look better pregnant when you're carrying boys because girls kind of take your beauty. She used to say, I don't know.
I like to say they suck the life right out of you because I have 2 daughters.
Yeah, but I at 14 years old, somebody said, "Do you think you'll get married?" I said, "Oh no, I'm getting married, maybe more than once, but I'm definitely I'm having 2 boys." So I knew my boys were coming.
Oh, that's so funny.
Hey, I know your parents passed away at a young age, and that kind of led you into really grabbing onto the health and wellness in your life. Can you talk a little bit about that transition? Because you walk the walk and you talk the talk, and it's been a long time. How has that helped you in the aging process?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's changed my life. I mean, I was not, I was like 54 pounds heavier than I am right now. I got very depressed after my father died. I ate my feelings. I was 17 and graduating from high school and went away one summer between high school and college. And I'll tell you a funny story. I put on so much weight. I know you're not supposed to talk about weight anymore, but I put on so much weight just eating my feelings during this summer. And I walked in, and my mother, who's a total character, dance teacher, had 6 kids, had, whatever. I walked in and she took one look at me and she went, "You're taking up smoking." It was a total character. But then I did take up smoking for a little while, but I hated smoking. And it was like the taste of cigarettes. I mean, this was 1970, so it's a long time ago. Right. It was, and I hated the taste of cigarettes, so I'd eat more and then put on more weight and stuff. I just was out of balance. And then when she took ill with arthritis, because after my father died, she aged so much from just losing the love of her life, and all of a sudden having to go to like a regular job. She had been the dancing teacher, at home, but in the studio and everything else, and did everybody's hair. But she had to go take a regular job because there were still 4 of us at home. And it was really it was tough on her. And the night before she was supposed to go on her first date, a few years after my father died, she fell at work. And, she was supposed to go on this date and she broke her hip. So, now that I know about arthritis and I know about food. So anyway, she was not doing well. And when the upper vertebrae of her spine disintegrated, shifted out of position, and paralyzed her from the neck down. And she had 2 holes drilled in her head. She was on this like hamster wheel kind of thing as they were trying to relieve pressure and get her body to circulate. And she was in such intensive care, and she had like this, like a Sparkletts jug size, water cooler jug size underneath her bed that was draining her lungs, and it was the color of Hawaiian punch and stuff. And she ended up having her leg amputated. My mother was teaching dancing in December, went to bed with the flu in January. It was a brutal Chicago winter, so she went into the hospital in February. She had her leg amputated in April and died in May. And I thought to myself, this is not going to, when she was suffering, I said, this isn't happening to anybody else in my family. If she gets out of here alive, I'm going to learn everything I can about the human body, and I'm going to save her life. And then when she passed away, I said, no, I'm going to do it for the rest of us, because my parents' deaths could not be in vain. I was not just going to roll over and play dead and act like nothing had happened, or we hadn't been dealt a certain genetic hand. I had to change so many things about my normal at the time. And I just became this obsessed student of health. And I went to medical libraries and nutritionists, and I went to the Bodhi tree in LA, if you know what that is, a hippy dippy place. I took a human anatomy class at UCLA. I went to medical journals. And I think because of my memory, I was able to cross-connect a lot of information and just sort of, help myself and help my siblings. And I just became my own guinea pig, and I changed everything about my lifestyle. And it just kept working and paying off. And, we've all outlived our parents now, and everybody says it's because I found a whole different path. So hopefully.
Wow. And it's great too that you were able, you changed it forever. Like I know in your book you mentioned, because I'm guilty of the yo-yo dieting and but trying to remember how that food made you feel.
Yeah.
You know.
learn to love the food that loves you. And I had a good enough, and believe me, it took me a long time. I'd go, 4 steps forward, 3 steps back, 6 steps forward, 8 steps back, and I'd be in Los Angeles and I'd be eating well. And then I'd go to Chicago and be like, woohoo, let me eat my way to Chicago. And this was not food that loved me. I mean, I knew, I was put in a clinic because I didn't go to the bathroom for 17 days once because of dairy products. I mean, I suffered. I had bad skin. I was getting sick a lot. I was not doing well. My weight would go up and down and up and down. And I was really good at hiding it, but I knew I wasn't happy. And I knew that it wasn't the way I wanted to be, and it affected my movement and in my breathing and everything. So, there's no looking back. And I just feel like I've been doing this for a long time now. I consider my health birthday, I always say August 15th, 1979. It was a Wednesday. It's when I gave up dairy products, and it changed my life forever, especially.
Wow. Wow. And you also wrote a book with your husband when your husband had cancer, bladder cancer and lung cancer.
Primary sites.
Yes. Yes. So it wasn't like they found bladder cancer cells with the lung cancer.
No, it hadn't metastasized.
You're on the cancer treadmill when you find out, your significant other has a spot on their lung, and you're driving to see them on a Friday night in bad traffic because we live far away from each other, and you're driving going, please just be lung cancer. Please just be that. Please just be lung cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And actually, the lung cancer was caught because of the bladder cancer.
Yes, no question. You guys do your homework.
Well, my father-in-law had bladder cancer, and he survived. He was in his 40s. It was right after my husband and I got married, and it was kind of a fluke how he caught it. Like, I think, isn't bladder cancer hard to detect? I mean, I think
it's actually easy to get to. It's kind of detect, but there's usually people like for Michael, he worked as a merchant seaman and traveled the world, lived in Brazil. His first family is all Brazilian. His ex-wife and his children are half Brazilian. And he worked on, with a lot of chemicals and was always breathing them in. And he was like running the ship, but also at a time he was working as a young man in the boiler rooms, and he was smoking and he was doing drugs then. And the thing that's interesting is that the urine in your bladder holds the liquid 80 times longer than anything else that circulates through your body. Your lymphatic system and everything else, your lymphatic liquids. So because it sits there, if you're ingesting chemicals like hairdressers and painters and photographers who are ingesting chemicals constantly, those chemicals are sitting in that bladder for a long time in the urine. And so that's kind of where it came from.
Well, he was a plant manager. So there you go. But he caught it because he took baby aspirin for heart, to try to help with his heart. And he had blood in his urine. And that's how he caught it. But he's 77 now. So, he's good. But, I saw.
Did he have his bladder removed or anything like that?
No, he did. He had just a section of it. Like, I think he said like a silver dollar size section. And yeah.
Yeah, Michael, we had been dating, we knew each other in college. He was my roommate's boyfriend. And he,
oh yes, do tell that story.
I love that.
Linda Buchanan, if you're out there, call me. We stayed really close until I started dating him. But you would think after 30 years, the girlful code was over,
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah. There's a statute of limitations on that after a while.
So we connected 18 years ago the other day. March 1st was our anniversary. And 4 days ago, we've been together 18 years. And we went on our first vacation 3 weeks into our relationship, and we were in Mexico City. And we were sharing space for the first time, and I followed him in the bathroom. And all of a sudden I noticed in the toilet bowl, there's like a little backsplash of blood. And I said to him, I knew it was me. And I said, Michael, are you bleeding? And he said, oh yeah, I get it once in a while. I've had it for 2 years. It's like no big deal. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So, I made him go to see the doctor. And sure enough, by the time he went to see, because he was traveling and everything else, by the time he went to see, the doctor said, oh yeah, you have cancer, but I got rid of it. He said, yeah, it's all taken care of. Because there's 2 different kinds of bladder cancer. There's the papillary kind, as you probably know. And then there's carcinoma in situ, CIS, which is the red, flat, velvety kind that starts to grow down into the organ. And so they lopped off all these little, almost like skin tags, the little papillary kind. And they did that 80% of the bladder cancer, that's what people usually have. And I didn't feel right about it, because when we went to see the doctor a week later, and he said, "Oh yeah, it was cancer, but it's gone. Don't worry about it. Come and see me in 6 months." It was like, I don't think so. So I took him to a doctor that I knew, and a urologist, and she said, "No, he's got the other kind, the red flat velvety kind."
Oh, goodness.
There was another doctor who wanted to take everything out immediately, and that's another whole story.
Wow. It is. That's a big thing we always say, is if you don't like it, trust your instinct and go. Check it again. And did they catch was it a bone? How did they catch was it a body scan? I forgot how they caught his lung cancer.
And he always talks about how the guy was like, it was a Friday, as I said, I was driving, it was a body scan. And so the guy was like, "Hey, let me check it out." And he puts the not X-ray. What is it called?
Is it an MRI?
Yeah, it's like the MRI thing.
The film.
Yeah. And he goes, "Yeah, you should," clicks it off immediately. And says, "Yeah, you should talk to your doctor on Monday." So Michael's like,
oh.
He goes to his car and he realizes, "Oh my gosh, I forgot my phone." So he goes back and he hears the guy on the phone saying, "Yeah, it doesn't look good. He's got a spot on his lung."
Oh, gee.
Oh my gosh.
So that called me. He was like stunned. And I thought, please just be lung cancer. Please just be.
Right.
But they took a piece of his lung off, right? And they managed to get it off. So there was no chemotherapy or.
He's just gotten a clean bill of health recently, and in both bladder and lung. And so, it'll be 18 years in November for both. So.
Wow. Now, did you say to him, "That's it? You are eating what I tell you to eat. You are going to be doing what I tell you to do from now on"?
Yes. That was it. Well, before we started, when he first got diagnosed and before we even went to see the urologist that I knew, we went to see, I said, let's see, I know what I would do for you, but let's see what, a regular, I've told the story a lot, but I'll tell you again. I said, let's see what a typical bladder cancer doctor would tell you. And we went there and the guy literally said, "This is your lucky day." And we said, "Really? Why?" And he said, "Because I have a cancellation on Wednesday." He said, "We're going to go in, we're going to take out the bladder, we're going to take out the prostate, we're going to make a neobladder by pulling down a piece of your intestines. And don't worry if you two want to have sex, we're going to run a small hose up his penis and you just pump it up 6 times. And I said, "Oh, well, can we have the 7 pump model?" Because I said, "What about nutrition, health, detox?" He went, "Oh, go have all the steak and highballs you want. Then we're going to do chemo and radiation and everything else." So we said, "Okay, we'll let you know about Wednesday." And in the parking lot, Michael said, "I'm not losing my organs." And I said, "I don't think you have to." So that's when we started that whole thing of detox. And he went to see the urologist who found the other kind of cancer. And he went to see my nutritionist, and he started doing immunotherapy, and he started shooting himself with Iscador, and he went to get high colonics, and he got infrared sauna. We got to put an infrared sauna in the house, and he got lymphatic massages, and he had major supplementation and chelation therapy and a lot of, hydration. Michael is incredible, and he's a great student, and he felt like, I want to save my life. So I'm going to do, it's like first do no harm. Let me do the things that I know are going to improve my quality of life and exercise more and eat better and all that stuff. Michael always says that he doesn't understand, like, fight the cancer, blah, blah. He goes, "No, you got to love it to death. You don't fight it. You love it to death. You have to love your cancer, and you have to love your body more than the cancer does. It's about love. It's not about, cut and fight and all that stuff."
That's so much to process in a short amount of time when someone tells you this, and you go out in the car and you're like, "What? Wednesday they're going to remove?" Yeah, they're going to oh my goodness.
I didn't even examine him first. He just looked at his, the papers from the doctors, lopped off the cancer. It's so crazy. That's why he got like 3 different opinions on everything, and he was just but he mainly felt like he was helping himself. So he, felt stronger and more capable of making decisions. And I'm just so damn pushy that I was, with a notebook, and I'd take everything down, because the patient, the caregiver has a big job. They have to pay attention all the time, and they have to take care of themselves. They have to dress warm, because every damn hospital and doctor's office is freezing. I was like in a new relationship, so I'm wearing all these cute little summer dresses like twice. And it was like, no, forget that. I'm wearing a sweatshirt, I'm in layers, I'm going to wear comfortable shoes, and multitask my health by going up and down the stairs and walking the halls and stuff. And so you have to take care of yourself as the caretaker, but you really have to be there for the patient. And even if they go through like dark times, because it's really their life, and Michael would get like super depressed, and I would have to give him the space and everything else. And so you just have to like go through what you go through and just take constant notes, because the patient hears cancer and it's like their eyes, go to the back of their head. They're like flipping through their lives. Whereas the caregiver has to be, okay, so what's going to happen? What is this recommendation? What is this? Let me ask these questions, go there with an agenda. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so your book, did this come out in 2016? The one, okay. And I did not get a chance to read that one yet, but I do want to read it, because I feel like when someone you love has cancer, you're kind of at a loss of what to do or what to say. You're like, what am I going to say that's going to hurt their feet? Is that going to make them scared? It, yeah. And I feel like that's just going to be really good advice for that, because we all,
especially if you have somebody in your life who's going through it. Michael really, because it was like a he said, she said kind of thing. We took turns and talking about what was going on. And he writes it so brilliantly as a male and as somebody who was going through that process.
Yeah.
And you didn't write it right after it happened. You took the time to completely process it. He had years of recovery.
Yes, we wanted the success story. If you write it just after, then you don't prove anything. But here it was 13 years after the fact, or I guess it was 12 when we wrote it, 12 years after the fact, and he had been in remission all that time. And let me tell you something, I've written 10 books. That one was the hardest to write, because I wanted to brain him during most of it. I'm a very linear, chronological kind of person. I think it's got to do with my memory. So I was like, okay, we're taking the reader. It's like you're taking the reader by the hand and you're walking them through the process. And Michael, because he had never written a book before, and he's very well read and extremely brilliant, he was writing Old Man and the Sea. I mean, we had there were like all these very florid kind of passages, and I'd say, no, we got to stay on the track of the cancer so that people understand what's going on.
We had talked off air that perhaps your healthy eating and exercise allowed you to have a very easy transition in menopause, like not a single hot flash, correct?
No, not a single hot flash. No night sweats, no loss of libido. I mean, literally, if I was asked to write a book about menopause, and I said it would be 2 words: it stopped. And I don't even like to tell people because they get mad at me. But I don't know whether it was genetic. My mother had a hysterectomy in her 40s, so she never went through menopause. I don't know what her menopause would have been like. Certain members of my family have had an easier time than others. But, for me, I just, it's so funny. I was dating Michael, Michael and I, we weren't married yet, but we're almost married, but we just, it was so, when we first got together before his cancer diagnosis, we were talking about having a baby again. And I got tested and everything was fine and his sperm was good and stuff. And then the cancer diagnosis happened like almost immediately. And so we, of course, we weren't going to have a child when he was going through all of that. And then when my period, like, boom, it stopped, and that was it. And I feel guilty, but I feel like, who knows whether it was genetic, maybe because I've never had hormones in my food for a long, long time, because I started eating a certain way in the 70s and gave up gave up dairy, especially, and meat. So maybe that was part of it. I don't know, but it was.
I don't know.
We talked to a lot of naturopaths that say how important the diet is in the symptoms. So there is a relationship there, definitely. Yeah. But I'm sure a lot of your girlfriends were like, seriously?
I know.
Seriously?
But I haven't really, I don't really know a lot of research behind it, but I do feel like when I was being more nutritious and more conscious about what I was eating, my symptoms were not as bad. They weren't.
I used to have terrible PMS before I got healthy. I mean, terrible, to the point where I would talk about it, and it became actually a taxi episode, but they didn't think having bad PMS was funny on Elaine. So they gave it to Simca and they called it Simca's Monthlies and wrote about her. But back in the day, I used to have terrible PMS. And then once I got a grip and realized nutrition and didn't want to swing that pendulum from one extreme food to the other, and realized like, oh, my period is 5 days from now, so I better be careful because there's going to be cravings, but let me not get into them, because once I do, I'm on that crazy, swing. Mm-hmm. And it changed so much for me. Like every single thing in my life, from my weight to my sleep, to my exercise, to my breathing, to my stomach, to the way skin and food, skin and muscle, and flesh hang on my body. Everything changed after I changed my diet. Just everything, I feel like, so I'm in better shape now. At 68, I'm 68 years old. At 68 than I was in my 20s. I really am. I don't, there's no looking back for me on that kind of thing. People always say, if you found out your life was ending, would you go and eat a food? And I say, there's nothing that I love the food that I eat now. Learn to love the food that loves you. That's just how.
Wow.
What recommendations along those lines would you give to women listening that are in midlife and beyond and are trying to make this next 20, 30 years a healthy, happy, positive experience?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, movement is very important. And one of my mantras is always, motion is the lotion. Motion is the lotion. And if you say that to yourself, then you start moving around your house. I have this great, because it's vegan, a mat and nap bag. See this bag? I'm showing you. I'll say it on the radio. I keep my phone in it. I wear it like a Miss America banner because I don't waist, it's too big, but I put it like this and I keep my phone in it. And by the end of the day, I can't believe how many steps that I've taken, so I'm always moving. I'm always like looking for the excuse to move. And, my book, my first book that I wrote, which was an autobiography, was called By All Means, Keep on Moving. And it's about resilience, and it's about, just you figure something out, you feel bad for a while, you process it, and you move on. And I think that it makes such a difference in your life when you do that. So I think movement is huge. It's big. And then, as I'm always saying, learn to love the food that loves you. And everybody's a little bit different. There are certain things that I can eat that Candace can't, or vice versa. And I just have learned over the years what works. And you have to, you have to recognize that you're this, every day is an experiment in the day of life. That's why there's no cheating. There's just data. It's not like, oh, I feel so bad, I did this. And it's like, no, today's experiment, wasn't as good as the other days, but it's just data, and you're just constantly collecting. You have to stop beating yourself up, because then you're just going to implode. So whatever you do with gusto, because it's like so much better to just have a good time with whatever it is that you're doing. And I think also, a mental process of letting things go or understand. One of the things that I was just talking to somebody the other day, I call it the 36-hour solution. And it's like you give any drama, a pimple, an injury, anything, 36 hours, and you can watch it heal. Because there's something about that shift in time of day and everything else that it's just a different perspective. So the 36-hour solution is helpful. But I think for people, it's like you stop with the ugly mirror, because I think a lot of times people have that ugly mirror, and it keeps them from doing anything. And it's also an excuse in a lot of ways, because it's like, oh, I feel so bad about myself. Stop feeling bad about yourself. Don't even put that in the process, and just think like, what can I do? What small thing can I do today? Well, how can I move a little bit better? How can I drink a little more water? How can I sit a little straighter? One of the things that I'm always saying to people, and I do this when I go around the country speaking, I always say, at some point in the day, just freeze and think like, ooh, if this were Pompeii and the lava was rolling in, and I was frozen forever in this time, is this the position I'd want to be in? So then it's like, okay, no, I'm going to sit up straighter. I'm going to sit on my haunches. It's like ears over shoulders, a bowling ball on a stack of plates. And I'm just going to sit up straighter, or stand up straighter, or walk a little straighter, because if you wear out your body, where are you going to live? So it's constantly realign, readjust, pay attention, and just be more mindful. We just have to be more mindful of this is it. This is our shell. This is what we've been dealt. This is the head that we have in terms of like our process. The other thing I'm always saying is that sometimes here's your head, and just outside of your head, there's clarity. So
just move a little.
Yeah.
Or unscrew like the ketchup bottle or something, and then screw it back on again, because it's
yeah. Well, I love those analogies.
Sometimes just stepping out of it, out of your own space a little bit, does give clarity. It's true.
Yeah. Talk to people. I mean, I have like such a wonderful network of family and friends and stuff, and sometimes you just need to like download, or here, you want to really get out of your bad self, go do something nice for somebody else. Nothing is going to make you feel better than doing something nice for somebody else. It's just, that's the law of the universe. So.
Yes,
that is so true. And I did like, when I was listening to your book, one of the things that I even thought of when I was thinking, gosh, she has this memory that doesn't stop, that you would be always thinking about the bad stuff. But you said in the book that you have to deal with that. It's almost like watching a horror movie the second, the third time. It's not as scary. It's almost kind of like, really, this is the movie.
I know what's coming around the corner. I always think like, okay, where was the craft service table? It's like, if this is the, yeah, no, but and I have a lot of adrenaline. I think that's tied to my memory. I don't like scary movies because I don't want to be scared, because I'm already, I can like, my nephew who's 8 years old, who lives with us sometimes, he comes around corners and scares the bejesus out of me, and he loves that because Auntie Lou is like, kind of like thinking of things and whatever. So I don't want to be extra scared.
Yeah, no, I love that part of the book, because and you talked about the journaling, and it was funny. I started to pick, like you said, to pick a year, or one of your exercises was picking a year. So I was picking a senior year in high school and tried to start. And I remember one of the events, and I'm like, oh, I forgot that I had to decide who won this tennis match. And this girl got so mad at me because the other girl fairly won. I was closer to the girl that didn't win. And I was like, that's right. She got really mad at me for making that call. And, things that you don't want to confront. But
things come up when you start to really go deep into your memories. One of the exercises I do when I work with people is a turning point exercise. I don't know if you read that part of the book, but I taught at Kripalu, and I've taught on the Taste of Health crew, and I have everybody bring in something that represents a turning point in their lives, and you kind of process it, and so you talk about what happened and why that was considered a turning point, and how the object fit into this, this examination. And I love to tell the story, because there was this one girl who brought in a perfume bottle, and she said, I haven't worn this perfume in a long time. It represents a relationship to me that really went south. He and I had a horrible breakup. I ended up being so depressed. I stopped going to work. I put on a lot of weight. I didn't want to exercise and everything else. She said, and I'm bringing this perfume bottle today because I love this perfume, and I want to get rid of the boogeyman about it, basically, because that's what it becomes. And I talk about that in the book, that it becomes this kind of emotional boogeyman. And so she called me after a few months later. She said, okay, I saw him, and we went to lunch, and I realized it wasn't all his fault. I took responsibility for my part in it. She said, I've been going to a gym. I'm feeling better about myself. I got a new job. She said, and I'm wearing the perfume. So sometimes you just go back to that fork in the road where something went wrong. And instead of feeling like victimized by what happened, you go back and process it. And I think that's where autobiographical memory comes in handy. And it's very therapeutic,
Mm-hmm. Now, do you still teach any classes? I know with everything with the pandemic, I didn't know if you still taught.
Well, I'm doing like 2 speaking engagements around the country. Well, not around the country, on Zoom and stuff like that. And I've done a few, but I mean, I usually go all over the country and do things. So it's been a little harder to do them in person. But.
Yeah.
So we know that you have a ton of movies coming out, which we will have everything in the show notes. Plus, we'll already do it in the intro. But is there another book maybe that you're thinking of writing?
A book right now, which I can't talk about the title just yet, but it's.
Okay.
And I think people will really spark to it because of the pandemic. I mean, it's like been the perfect time, because I think everything that I'm talking about in the book, people might have, it's funny because when I told certain people that I'm writing this book, they were like, what? And now it was like, oh my gosh.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. We have taken up a lot of your time and we certainly appreciate it.
Pleasure, blast. I knew I'd have a great time with you because I heard my friend Marsha Mason on.
Oh, thank you.
We love her.
Thank you. Thank you. No, this is great. Bravo to you guys.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Years and living your lives and having your kids do what they're doing, and God bless you.